Outer Orange.
Another Grand Blue profile. Oh my goodness, what is this Outer Orange? What is this? What are you, a Grand Blue channel? Well, maybe not quite, but you know, I do love Grand Blue. It's one of my favorite clans, and today I want to talk about V Premium Beatrice. Yo guys, editing Orange here. Just want to let you guys a quick little update. If you are part of my Discord, we are currently doing a road to 100 levels, a little mini Discord event. Pretty much what happens is if you, that's right, you over there engages in the Discord, literally just talk or do whatever, and you make it to 100 levels using the Me6 bot. If you make it to 100 first, you get to get a little special surprise. So go engage, go join the Discord, do whatever. There's still some time, so while you can, go get the engaging going, and maybe you'll be the special person that gets the special prize. All right, back to the video. Before I start, I want to just say Beatrice is a very unique deck in V Premium. I think it's one of the funnest versions of Grand Blue, and I just want to share with you guys that this has been one of the decks that I've been taking to pretty much a good majority of the events that I've recently been going to. I was going to take this version to BRO, but I did decide to take something else to stay a little bit safer. But let's go ahead and discuss it. We're going to be going over why even bother with this deck, what is its purpose, kind of give you like a little bit of rundown on what this deck does, because it is a little different and plays a little bit differently from most other decks, including Grand Blue itself. This deck does play a little differently from like a typical Grand Blue deck. So we're going to go ahead and kind of discuss that here, and then I'll go into deck profile and give you guys kind of how I've been playing this deck. So the reason why you would want to take this deck, so this deck is extremely tanky, but also has a lot of multi-attack potential. It does attack more than a Night Rose deck would, but the attacks can be a little bit smaller, and the counterblast of it is a lot higher. But because it is such a brick wall, it does deal with stuff like Cameo, which is currently a deck that does cause a lot of issues for a lot of players. Angel Feather is very aggressive, very OTK, and luckily enough, Beatrice is one of the few decks that actually can handle that type of pressure of crits upon crits with really high columns. So that is kind of why you might want to consider taking Beatrice, but also it's just a really fun deck. If you are kind of an Excel player and you really want to try out a different type of Excel deck, this deck does have that capabilities of feeling like an Excel clan. And because it multi-attacks like crazy, they're all kind of pokey attacks, and then you have a couple lethal attacks. So it's kind of like just a really fun deck. It's also a mind game deck, and I'll kind of get into the mind game concept of this deck as we kind of go into the profile, but I wanted to kind of share with you guys just the beginning, kind of like a little intro for it, because I feel like this deck needs one. There's some decks that are kind of more straightforward. This is not a straightforward deck. There's one of the decks you look at and you kind of just wonder, why would you play this and how does it work? So that's why we are here. But anyway, I kind of gave you guys the rundown of the Grand Blue Beatrice deck. I call this like a Beatrice Excel with a touch of control survival deck. I don't really know what else to call it. It's kind of like an in-between of all of those things. But let's go ahead and talk about the actual deck. I'm going to show you guys kind of the rundown of it, and let's get on to it. Yeah! All right, fam, I'm back here as good old Beatrice, and you know, all her Beatrice glory. Before we begin, gotta do our usual Deckbox. So this is the Nanaha Deckbox. I did used to use this for my premium deck, but then I switched over to the Miku one from the quintuplets. But yeah, this Deckbox is extremely large, and I love it for that because you can just fit so much in here. You can fit an entire premium deck, no problem, and that's what I've been using it for. But then I just put my V premium in here since my premium stuff moved over. For the sleeves, I have MOB sleeves because all my Grand Blue stuff is sleeved in MOB sleeves because they're cheap, they're easy to find, and also it just makes it easier for me to tech options in, tech options out. I don't have to re-sleeve every single time. But that's pretty much that. Other than that, guys, so here we are. Here's the Beatrice deck profile. Now this deck is very unique, very kind of different. I'll be showing you guys kind of some combos and a little bit of kind of how the deck works, because this deck does take a little bit of a different angle from a typical deck. As I mentioned, this deck plays like an Excel deck, and I'll explain why. So she has a couple skills. We'll be using pretty much every one of her skills in here for this deck. So she has a first skill, says Rearguard Vanguard. When placed, you can call a card not named Ghosty Beatrice from your drop zone to rear. So pretty much what you can do is you can place her as a Vanguard or Rearguard. You can call whatever you want from your drop and call it to the board. So you can call your Skull Dragons, Ghosties, pretty much anything you need. You can call it out. You Greed Shade, Column Bard, whatever you're in the mood for, you can call it out with this card. But she has other skills too. She has a continuous skill that says all your units with Ghosty in their card name on Rearguard or Guard Circle get Intercept and 5k power, 5k shield. So pretty much what that says is, hey, anything with Ghosting's card name instantly has a higher shield, but also has a higher attacking power, and you can also intercept with them. So if you have something like this, you can, you know, just go ahead and intercept. It's really solid, it's really fun stuff, makes everything just a little bit more beefy and kind of adds to the tankiness of the deck. She does have one final skill. She says when your Rearguard is retired from a card's ability during your turn, Counterblast call a card with a Ghosting's card name, a grade less than to the grade that was retired from your drop zone to career. What does that mean? Pretty much what that means is, let's use a Skull Dragon as example. This card, when it attacks, it retires at the end of battle. So when this happens, you can use her skill to counterblast and call something below this grade. So this is a 3, so you can call it 2. The only thing is it has to be a ghosty card. So you can call a grade 2 ghosty, a grade 1 ghosty, a grade 0 ghosty after this, but you can't call an equal grade and you can't call something that's non-ghosty related. So that's pretty much what you would do. And it's pretty much a form of multi-attacking, because you'd go from a 3 to a 2 to a 1 to a 0, essentially kind of escalating down with every time your power does decrease. But there are some cards that kind of increase power on top of the fact that ghosties themselves get power. And this is a kind of a protect 2 deck, which is something I should just very specify. You usually go protect 2 in this deck. Sometimes you have to go protect 1 if your opponent is really good at, you know, retiring your stuff, but easily you can go protect 2 in this deck and have no problems whatsoever. And you'll have really beefy interceptors on top of that and everything else. And with you putting yourself on protect 2, all your attacks hit for way higher numbers on top of the fact, you know, shield is just really nice. So that's kind of why we go this route. Now this is kind of like a mind game route, as your numbers get lower but your opponent still has to keep guarding. So because of that, you want to keep smacking them as hard as possible, force them to guard, force them to lose their tempo, force them to lose their shield, and as they lose their shield, they're going to have a tougher time recovering. That's kind of how this deck functions, and it's kind of like what we'll be discussing as we go through. So let's go ahead and put Beatrice over here. So this is Skull Dragon. I run 2 copies of him. You only really need to, I would like to run more, but honestly, as long as you have the 2 out on the board, you're pretty much a-okay. Sometimes you don't go into him because it is very counterblast costly. He requires counterblast that Jesse and Damien and, you know, the 0 do not. So sometimes going into him too many times will force you to use your counterblast a lot faster, and sometimes you may not want that. But at the end of the day, he is still a aggressive beast stick. You will go through your deck really fast, so he will easily be swinging between anywhere from 50 to 80 pretty much every single game that you play with him. So you do want to see him. Definitely want to at least have 1 copy out at all times. Sometimes you can just swing on this side, leave it alone, and have another one on this side and just start, you know, going crazy with the constantly calling cards out. But yeah, pretty much your beat stick, you need him. He's good, and yeah, he just secures you place, so you kind of need him. Going to the grade 2s, I'll start with the best card ever. This is Greed Shade. I love Greed Shade. I will constantly gush over Greed Shade. This card just helps you with, in this deck, this card mainly helps you with milling, helps you secure your pieces faster. You can also pick up a ton of shield with him. You can pick up perfect guards, pick up pretty much whatever you need. This deck is a protect 2 deck, so you do need to gain access to your perfect guards really fast. This is one of the best ways to do it. You mill, you bring back a perfect guard to hand. Cool, now you have a perfect guard. You don't have to deal with very aggressive force decks as easily, and you want to run 4 because you do want to see this card as soon as possible, as you want to see your deck go through really fast so you can get your pieces, as you do need a Skull Dragon, a grade 2 Jesse, a grade 2 Ghosty, which is Jesse, a grade 1 Ghosty, which is Damien, and you want to see Chappie as soon as possible. If you don't see that engine on by the time you ride to Beatrice, you're going to have a tougher time kind of escalating your turn every single turn. There are some cases where you want to slow down, but in that case, just don't place this card down. But you still want to make sure you can farm for what you need, as this deck does not have a good hand size. This deck's hand depletes like crazy fast. Your main hand is you being able to intercept and you being able to guard from other places. So because of that, you won't have a large hand a good bit of the time. So with that being said, you need to make sure you secure your pieces, so that way you can have a constant pressure going on, and that's why we need Greed Shade pretty much at max, as he is the big engine behind that. Did I explain what Greed Shade does? Greed Shade says on place, discard a card. Mill 2, call something back, in case you don't know, that's what the card does. Next I have Columbard. I really wish I could exchange this card out for something else. I don't think this card is that great in this deck specifically. I don't think it's, I think this card works best in Night Rose, to be honest. I don't think it's as needed in like other versions of Grand Blue as much, just mainly because there really isn't anything that worth it to call it out with a counterblast. Like normally your other stuff counterblast too, and you need that stuff more than you need this thing to counterblast, but it's still not bad because you still want to get your Skull Dragons out and stuff like that. I just think in this deck in particular, you're not always going to need this card. This is definitely the card to replace, in my opinion. I can definitely see myself just changing this out as soon as possible, as there are definitely situations where you don't want this. Now the upside to this card is that you can get your pieces, and then you can Navigator with this card, and then you can get your Jesse out, and then you can just go on a party with Jesse, because this will never be attacking. It's a 9k, it's kind of useless. You always have Greed Shade maybe attacking at some points, but you'll never see this attacking. This will usually be like somewhere in the far distance doing whatever. Next I have 2 Jesse the Ghosties. These cards are 10k shields. This is also your attack extender that continues on from Skull Dragon. So from Skull Dragon you would go into this card specifically. It has 2 skills. You can retire 2 rear guards not named Jesse to call call this card out to rear. This ability can only be used once by this card. This card's exact name, by the way. But the other thing is that if you retire 2 rears, you call it out. But the other thing it has is when it attacks, it gets an additional 5k, so it's a 14k attacker. And at the end of the battle, you must countercharge. You must retire it, and then when you do, you can countercharge. So you have to retire it, and then if it's your first time doing it, you do countercharge. If it's your second time doing the skill, you do not countercharge. Something to keep in mind: if you do this on both sides, this side will get you the countercharge. This side will not get you a countercharge. So it's something to note. But we run 2 because you do want to see them kind of pretty soon. And when you go from 2 skull dragons into these, sometimes it makes it easier with the attack patterns if you have both out on the field, guys. You can just counterblast and then do your thing and call both of these out at the same time. Whereas if you're kind of missing one, or if you have one in drop or something, or if you have one in damage and you have one here, you're going to be doing this weird thing where you have a dragon swinging from 3 and going down to 1, and then another dragon swinging from 3 going down to 2. And sometimes you may not want that. You want to utilize your attacks as much as possible if you can, and because of that, you do want to make sure you hit both of them, so you can call out both and do whatever, or call them in different attack patterns, whatever you want to do. This is a very attack pattern type deck, so it kind of depends on how your attack. Grade 1s, this is the new Sea Strolling Banshee. I want to talk about this card for a second. First of all, this card can be replaced with Navigator. If that is your playstyle, that's perfectly fine. You can easily run Navigator. That's what I used to run. I used to run Navigator, and this card came out, so I've been experimenting with this card. Probably something I should know. I'm still experimenting with this deck. There's still a lot of room for like maybe maneuvering some stuff around, but moving some stuff around, but I'm really not too sure. Right now, I'm testing out the Banshee, so this is kind of why the Banshee's in here. But like I said, you can make these all 4 Navigators if you want. You can even put 1 Navigator in and maybe combat it out. Whatever you want to do, that is up to you. You can do that, but this card pretty much lets you on place mill a card when it's on Vanguard, which is really good in this deck specifically, as it gives consistency to hitting your dragons as soon as possible. So it's not too terrible. And then rearguard skill, anytime she attacks or boosts, you can choose to mill 2 cards. If you hit a trigger, then you can retire her to draw a card. It's really good just for cycling mainly. You're pretty much getting rid of this to get something else, whatever it is that you need. Usually it'll be shield, but stuff like that. She also just helps you mill, so it helps you secure your drop zone a little bit faster, and that's why she's here. But again, if you want the faster milling approach, Navigator will definitely do it for you. Navigator is also a lot cleaner with Jessie, whereas this card is not. This card kind of just stays there, and if you don't want staying there, then Navigator might be the better play. Like I said, I'm still experimenting with her. She's not bad, but she's your milling engine, she's your drawing engine, she is your Vanguard engine. She's best on Vanguard, to be honest. I think her rearguard skill is kind of okay. I do think she's best in Night Rose right now as well. In Night Rose, you can get away with this card pretty well. I think in other decks, it's kind of like a hit or miss. I do think Peanut Noir also utilizes this card actually really well, and that's another reason probably why it's printed towards Peanut Noir, because it definitely works in Peanut Noir pretty well. Next, I have 4 Damien the Ghosties. So Damien the Ghostie is your next attack extender. So we had Skull Dragon, we had Jessie, now we have Damien the Ghostie. This card is not mandatory though for you to have to countercharge. This card says at the end of battle attacked, it says cost to retire this unit, and then you may countercharge and all that stuff. So you don't have to do it. You can choose not to and keep it as an interceptor on the board. 10k shield becomes 15 on Beatrice. Pretty good stuff. It countercharges and multi-attacks. But the next thing about this card is on place, it has a selective mill. On place, you can selectively mill a Ghostie, so you can selectively mill your Jessie, you can selectively mill Beatrice. You can on place, if you say you don't have your Beatrice in hand yet, you can on place grab your Beatrice, put in the drop, and the next turn go into Greed Shade, and then I get Greed Shade to discard mill 2 cards, and then grab your Beatrice. It's one of the best things that this card supplies. It makes it so you don't miss your ride engine, because riding to Skull Dragon will literally lose you the game. You cannot recover from that. You won't have time to recover from that. There are decks that will just beat you down and you will lose. You don't have your brick wall. You have literally nothing. So you want to make sure you secure Beatrice, and the best way to do it is with this card. That's why we run it at 4. You also want to see this card as soon as possible. As I said, it's an attack extender, and if going from a 2 for a 1 to a 0 is one of the best feelings ever. Sometimes the dragon isn't as necessary, but you need to see Jessie, you need to see Damien, you need to see Chappie. So that's pretty much the main gist. This card has a lot of utility, and I love it for that. The only downside is it's not a heavy attacker. It becomes a 13k attacker, which is like decent, and then on Protect 2 it becomes an 18k attacker. So it's pretty much just little baby Excel numbers. But like I said, its other skills are so nice that I just don't even mind. Next, I run 2 Path the Ghosties. This is your meta call card. You don't need to run these if meta doesn't call for it. So right now we have a big, strong Hamiel Angel Feather meta, and because of that, you kind of have to run these, because what you do with this card is her skill. The skill says if your drop zone send more cards, you can call this out to guard circle. They instantly bind the minute they hit guard circle, so they are out of the game. And unlike Premium, where you can unbind stuff, you cannot unbind stuff in this format. So once they're bound, that's it. But the bright side is like, so you're facing Angel Feather, Gabriel will always be the first thing that's swinging. The Vanguard usually always swing first, unless there's just so many crits that they can choose to swing elsewhere, and or unless if you're at 4 damage, they can kind kind of change it up a bit. But chances are they'll swing with Vanguard first, that way they can enable more crits. If they do that, you can instantly just pop these out, not use your hand, and then be safe for anything else that your opponent has coming for you. So this lets you go around using your hand, which means you can hard guard Hamiel a lot easier and all that stuff. So that's mainly why we run these two. But if the meta ever shifts where OTK is not really a thing from Angel Feather, you could probably get away with dropping these completely and just running something else. This is a meta call card. You can easily exchange these for other things if meta shifts. So this is something that you can just think about as meta changes, or if ban lists happen or whatever. Next I run 4 Negerbone. This card is very necessary. So as I mentioned before, you know, sometimes you deplete hand, but also sometimes you need to see your Skull Dragon as soon as possible. You also, this deck has a chance of decking out, so that's why you want to run these, just so you don't deck out. And then, you know, there's obviously situations where you just want to call Skull Dragon out and you have no other way to do it but this card. So this card will pretty much this card gives you 4 chances to pretty much call your Skull Dragon out in case you can't do it any other way. This will be another shot for you to do it. Usually you can get your Skull Dragon out like with Combar and stuff like that, but sometimes, or you can get it out with Beatrice, but this is just another extender to get it out. And then you can discard something in your hand that you don't want and then go into your Skull Dragon, or you can go to Jesse, or you can go to anything else. Sometimes you won't have a board, and if you don't have a board, you can just discard this for a Jesse to start enabling the 2 to 1 to 0 attacking combo. Next I run Cutlass. I honestly kind of want to, I'm trying to find space to put this at 4. I feel like this card is like mandatory at 4 because this deck goes through counterblast like this. On your push turn, you will see your counterblast like get destroyed. Your push turn is going to be extremely counterblast heavy, and because of that you need to see this card. Another thing that's good about this card is it does become a rear guard as well. It countercharges, becomes a rear guard. It also heals your drop a little bit, makes you go further into your deck. Just a really good card to have. Like I said, you kind of need this. The only downside is like it's a 6k, but other than that, it's overall like a nice card. You can guard with it early and then use it later to bring it back out. It kind of refunds itself. It's really nice. You need the countercharger. That's all I can say. You really need a countercharger in this deck, and sadly the only way you can countercharge is through this and through Jesse. And though it sounds like, you know, you have a lot of countercharging options, you do go through your counterblast really fast. Going in on our last card that's not a trigger is Chappie the Ghosty. I mentioned Chappie the Ghosty early. This is your final attack extender. Once you go from Damien, you can go into this, or, you know, from anything. You can even go from Skull Dragon to this. Some people don't know, but the Beatrice engine does not require you to go down every single grade each time. It's just word differently, but you can go from 3 to 0, you can go from 2 to 0, you can go from 1 to 0. You can start with 1, go to 0, you can start with 2, go to 0. You have options, so you can go into this pretty easily. It says one place, if your drop zone has 10 or more cards, this unit gets 10k shield, 10k power, 10k shield. So essentially, you know, if you guard with it from your hand, it's a 20k block, and actually with Beatrice added on, it would become a 25k block. If you intercept with it, you do not get the skill, as it does say when placed, not when put, but you still intercept with it as a 15k, and then obviously on place as a attacking rear guard, it becomes a 20k attacker, and if you put a booster behind it, it gets all the way up to 38 if you with protect markers and everything else. So this card gets very high, very fast. It's your best 0 to go into, usually better than Rick the Ghosty. The only difference between this and Rick is the fact that Rick has a higher shield, so that's the biggest difference. But otherwise, this card is also a good go-to. Honestly, if meta ever changes, I would even recommend running 2 of these and going Heal Guardians all the way, because the only thing that sucks with this deck is that you can't go full Heal Guardians because you need your zeros, since your zeros are Rick the Ghosties. So just something to think about. Let's talk about triggers. This is gonna be the weirdest part of this entire profile, as you know, this is the part where things get weird. Things were already weird, they're about to get weirder, but we'll go ahead and start with the heals. Obviously you want to run 4 heals. I'm currently going a 2-2 split with my Heal Guardians. The reason being is you need to see this so you can extend your attacks. Extending your attacks is important. You can extend your attacks with this card just same way you can extend it with Chappie. So you do want this. The only downside is the fact that you have to sacrifice not running Heal Guardians for it. And honestly, depending on meta, there may be times where this is okay. There may be times where this is not okay. I kind of want to go for a 3-1 split where I have 3 Heal Guardians and 1 Rick the Ghosty chilling. So that'll probably be kind of what I end up going into once I get more Heal Guardians and once I kind of test out a little bit more. So far so far I'm okay with this currently, because sometimes you don't want to mill this out, but sometimes you don't have a choice because you want to have 2 zeros attacking and you just can't get to it. But you can always stop on Damien as well, but it's very choicey, so I'm still figuring this part out. I think going 2-2 is okay, but it would be nice to go 3-1. He is a ghosty, so he does become a 25k shield in your hand, which is really awesome. It means you have 50k shield total, which is good. If you want all 4, you have 100k worth of shield, which is really nice. You pretty much can live through anything. If you happen to be holding 3 of these, you have literally no problem guarding Hamiel. By the way, just these cards alone will literally guard Hamiel for you, so yeah, there's literally no concern there. So it's just a really nice thing that you can just add on to the plate of just silly stuff that you can do with Beatrice. Next we run For draw PGs, you really need perfect guards, as you'll mainly be going protect 2 in this deck, so you need perfect guards like ASAP. You can't cut back on these in any kind of way. You need 4. If you ever go protect 1, cool, but most of the time you'll be going protect 2. In that case, you need to see these because there's a lot of matchups that will swing for 3, 4, 5 crit. Genesis is a good example. Uranus is a good example. None of them really have like guard restrict specifically, so you really want to make sure you can PG any really brutal attacks that come in your way in case you don't want to take 5 damage or you're at lethal and you don't want to take 5 damage either way. So this is the card that you want to use to kind of help secure that. Next, I have 8 draws. So as you can tell, yes, this is a full-on draw deck. Now, people might be asking, why in the world would you ever want to do this? There's a couple of reasons why you want to run draws. As I mentioned before, this deck is a mind game. You really want to make sure that your opponent doesn't hit defenses. The best way to do that is to not run crits. So if you run crits, like let's say you're literally just started your turn and you go into a Skull Dragon on this side, and let's just say you have like a Greed Shade or something on this side. So this is your turn. Vanguard, rear guard, rear guard. Say you've already done a couple things, you decide to swing with Vanguard, and your Vanguard lands a crit. You put it on your Vanguard, and you put the power on your Jessie. Your opponent goes whiff and then hits a defense. That is really bad because now your entire turn is shut down because this no longer hits. Now, if you're on Protect 2, this will hit, but they're going to be we're going to be at 12 or 23. From here on out, this attack no longer hits, or these attacks will no longer hit. So when you go into the grade 1, no longer hits. When you go to the grade 0, it will just barely hit if you have a booster back here. So your attacks will no longer start hitting anymore. Now, if you have the same situation, but you swing through Vanguard and you hit a draw instead, your opponent takes 1 damage and they whiff, say they don't hit a defense, this will still hit, which means they still have to guard this or they still have to take it. Same will go for the 1, same will go for the 0. Your opponent still has to make a choice. Do I guard this or do I take it? Whereas if once they hit 2 damage and once a defense, now they don't have to worry about anything for this anymore. These attacks just don't matter. And if they do matter, they only matter a little bit. So pretty much it's kind of like a mind game. You're forcing your opponent to have to guard as much as possible. They could just go ahead and take all 5 damage. That's cool. If they do that, then yeah, that's fine. That's good for you. You survive their lethal turn and then you go again, and now they're at 5 damage and they literally can't do anything about it. They have to guard everything that you throw at them, and their defenses will no longer save them unless they heal out of it. So this is kind of like why you want to run the draws, because you don't want your turn to be shut down. As I mentioned, this deck goes from like a super high number, which will be your Skull Dragon, and then go into smaller numbers. The only number that will be decently high will be your Chappie. Your Chappie will be a little bit higher than your grade 1, but other than that, your attacks are pretty Excel numbers. They're pretty much they're Excel numbers, and your opponent with a defense will shut it all down. So you need to run the draws so that way they're not shut down. Why I don't run crits is because crits, say your opponent just says completely just guards this. If you put crits on your rears aren't that big. What are they guarding? Like so you put your crit on this Jessie. Your Jessie is a 24k, now it's a 34k. So they're guarding a 34k 2 crit attack. Like, do you really care? The answer is no, you don't care. You don't care, and because of that, that's another reason why crits are just kind of useless, or they don't really do much in this deck. They really aren't doing too much. Your opponent can usually guard a 24k attack. Say you want to protect, if you want to protect 1 especially, this will be 19k. That's an easy 10k guard. They're not going to worry about that much. They can sentinel guard it with a 30k. There's so many things that they can do that attack just doesn't matter. So that crit does not matter. What matters is you getting as many attacks possible out without having to use a single counterblast for it. That is what your goal is. You want to just keep pushing them and pushing them and pushing them. That's why every single turn you want to have 2 Jessies or 2 Skull Dragons out. If you can't afford the 2 Skull Dragons, you should have double Jessie every single turn. So this is why we run draws. Sorry, explaining draws is like a whole freaking process, because like, no joke, I get so many people asking me why in the world I run this many draws, because yes, you can increase your deck out. Another reason why to run draws is literally because, as I mentioned earlier, this deck does not plus at all. This deck only recycles. It never pluses. The only plus you get out of is if you literally retire to rear guards, call Jessie, and just start swinging, and your Vanguard would get you 2 cards. Other than that, you do not plus. That's why we need Pat the Ghosty. That's why we need Rick the Ghosties. You need as any shield you can get. You need it, as this deck does have a really good shield, but you barely plus with this deck. So you need to see these draws also to just plus your hand in case you do need to guard some very brutal attacks. These will help you get through that as quickly as possible. And also, you want to be able to discard for your bones. If there's a situation where your only hand is 1 card, you will not be able to call a double Skull Dragon board. You need 2 cards in hand, so that way you can discard both of them for your bones and call out 2 Skull Dragons. It is very, very important, and that is another reason why you want to make sure that you hit your draws, or get your draws kind of roll, or you have the draw engine going so that you can hit your draws more likely to hit your draws. That way you can just push and push and push as much as possible. So that's pretty much the kind of deck profile. Before I officially start explaining some stuff here, don't forget your starter and then your quick shield. Please don't forget your quick shield. So many people tend to forget their quick shields. I don't really know why. I said this like in my last profile. I'm just very surprised how much people just don't value the quick shield. It's actually a really great thing. You don't want to forget it. But anyway, so let's go ahead and get into kind of like the combo wombo that you can just sort of do with this deck. So you want to just like, so say you just rode, you get your Protect 2 marker. You use her skill to Soul Blast, like call something out. So you can call out a dragon. So call a dragon on this side. Then you can call kind of like whatever on this side. I'm just gonna use this as an example. Just grab it, just kind of use it as an example as he does become a 14k attacker. So if you don't want to go too aggressive, but you want to just use your one counter blast for the entire turn, I would recommend putting like a booster back here, preferably a ghosty booster, as it'll just kind of help you secure and deal with stuff. You can also like put another booster behind your Vanguard, just make your number a little bit more annoying. But this is like a really nice setup for you, as you can choose to put a Jessie over here, but if you do, then you have to then you're gonna have to counterblast for it and when it dies, because and also it just straight dies. It's a mandatory skill, so you want to be cautious of that. But pretty much in this situation, what you can do is you can just start spamming on you can actually start with the baby attack, you know, poke your opponent a little bit if you really want to, and then you can start with your Skull Dragon attack. You can counterblast for his skill and then grab a Jessie. And then from here on out, this side will be 100% for free. So then you can attack. This will be 24, kill it, go into the 2, go into the 1. Attack for 18, kill it, go into the Chappy, and then, oh, oopsie. And then if you have 10 or more, this will get, if you have 10 more drop, this will get an additional 10k on top of that. So now this column right here is swinging for 38 total to your opponent's Vanguard. So this is nice stuff. And you literally did that for the cost of literally 1 counter blast. And then that's it. You pretty much go with your Vanguard here. You can, you know, do whatever, get power to your rear, you draw a card, etc. So this will now be 20. So now this will be swinging for 48 to your Vanguard, to your opponent's Vanguard, blah, blah. Now, and that's pretty much it. So you would swing here, and then you would end turn, and now you have a nice little interceptor. You have double interceptors, you know, you have some pass in your drop or whatever. You can also go into Rick the Ghosty if you want. In this situation, it is okay. So you can also go into Rick the Ghosty instead. This is kind of just you thinking what to do. If your opponent hasn't hit a defense, you could probably go into Rick the Ghosty. If your opponent hit a defense, you have to go into this because this gets a 10k buff and you want this to hit over. So it's just kind of situational. It kind of just depends on what your opponent's doing. Rick the Ghosty will be a higher interceptor, but you know, but this still won't be bad, as it will be pretty much 10, it will be 25. It'll be a Rick the Ghosty. Rick the Ghosty is just higher in shield, so it'll be a high Rick the Ghosty would be at 35. So that's pretty much it. So that's pretty much your like normal turn that you can just do. And for every counter blast, you can pretty much do this every single turn. As long as you can keep getting one dragon out, your one side will just be constantly annoying to deal with, and your opponent just has to keep dealing with it. Of course, they hit a defense, it will shut down this column completely, and you kind of need to know when to commit, because if you double up on that, then you have to be careful on how you're doubling up. Now let's pretend you do want to double up on it. So let's just go ahead and fix ourselves here real quick. Say you intercepted, say you rode again. If you didn't, it's okay, but it would be nice to ride again when you do this lethal blow. So let's pretend we did ride again. So you would Soul Blast, call a dragon. So we'd call a dragon on this side. Then you can go kind of ballistic here. So we'd first like discard one of these cards. Usually the 5Ks are really easy discards. You can discard one of these cards to get for the bone skill. So you get your bone out, put it to the bottom, and then you call whatever. So you call a dragon, and then actually even before the bone, you might want to prioritize using this skill first. So you can call Jessie here, use a skill. We'll pretend that we did the skill first. Grab another. Oh, I don't have any ghosties in here. We'll pretend that we grab a ghostie, but I don't have any more ghosties in here. But pretend you did grab a ghostie, you milled it out, whatever, and then you have that, you have another extra mill, and then you have the bone at the bottom, so you have a higher chance of just hitting your pieces, your guard pieces, I mean your triggers. That way your opponent can't go around it. If you are in this situation, you are in a pretty good spot here. So you have your double dragons out, and then you have your ghosties out in the field, so even if your opponent does hit defenses, that these will still help you push further. This is a situation where you can just kind of just go ballistic. Usually it's good to just do one side first, and usually it's the side that's smaller that you want to do first. So sometimes you may even want to put your Protect 2 here. In case they hit defenses, this will automatically make it hit over defenses just by that. But you know, it just depends on the situation. So you can go into your dragon. You want to counter blast for him, get out a Jessie, And you're pretty much just gonna be doing the same thing you just did, but just on this side, but now you're gonna do it twice. So you're gonna, again, loop through. Nothing will counterblast on this side, so you're gonna loop into your 1, and then you're gonna swing with him, and then you're gonna loop into your 0. And you might wanna prioritize getting the Rick the Ghosty out for this one, as you want this side to be the bigger side. You want this side to count more. So you would go into the Rick the Ghosty. This in total would swing for 13, 23, 28 to your Vanguard, to their Vanguard, and you can kind of stop there. If your opponent still hasn't hit a defense at this point, you can make a choice between swing with Beatrice or swing with Skull Dragon. You can honestly swing with your Skull Dragon, as it's going to be extremely hard for them to block this. When they start blocking this, they're going to have an even harder time blocking your Vanguard. But now here comes where the counterblasts get really heavy. So you're going to counterblast for the Skull Dragon, get yourself a 2. And then when you swing with this, you're going to have to counterblast again to get yourself a 1. And then when you swing with this, you're gonna have to counterblast again to get yourself the final 0, which in this case will be Chappy. So there's Chappy. Chappy, and then Chappy will have the 10k again. And you're pretty much in the same situation you were before, but now your opponent has dealt with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then this will be the 8th attack, this will be the 9th attack. So you can kind of choose where you want to go with this. Typically, it makes sense to just attack with your Vanguard, do your drive checks. We hit a heal, cool. I'll heal out. I think I have a Rick the Ghosty in here. I do not. I'll heal out the Cutlass, because Cutlass is good. Put power here, again, he goes up, and then your opponent will have to deal with the 9th attack, which will now be, again, 48 to their Vanguard. And that's pretty annoying to deal with, and normally your opponent would just kind of lose here if you properly did it right. Now, the downside to this is you'll notice we went through literally all our counterblasts. Everything has gone through, so you really, really, really need to be careful how you utilize this engine, as you can go through counterblasts really fast. Now, if you're in a situation where your opponent does survive, you're gonna have to take a damage, hope you have Cutlasses in hand, and hope that you can do that again, on top of the fact that you're gonna need to bone again to get your dragons out, and you just have to be very careful kind of like what you're doing. If you hit your Beatrice, you can ride a Beatrice on top to get yourself a free call, which is really nice, and that'll probably be one of the best things to see. But you do have to be very cautious in the situation, as you are low on counterblast, and the only way you can get them back down is, you know, getting a Cutlass or just healing in that case. So that's kind of why you have to be careful. You really want to tempo this out. You can constantly, if you don't want to go into that full blow, you can constantly cycle these with one counterblast, like, and this guy, right? But you cannot cycle both sides every single time. You will eventually start losing your counterblast, and you won't be able to do anything. So you have to be very cautious kind of what you do in that. And that's pretty much it. I just kind of want to show you guys that combo, the war that this deck is capable of, but it's kind of like very situational at very certain times, and it's easier to see if you're facing against an opponent, as you can kind of see the interactions a little bit better. That's pretty much it. Let me go ahead and switch on over. I really, really, really enjoy playing Beatrice. It's actually one of my favorite archetypes. It's one of the decks that I've been playing the most of out of everything Grand Blue. It definitely reignited Grand Blue for me. Just in general, playing Beatrice is just awesome in every shape, way, or form. It's just an overall fun deck. It does require a little bit more of the cranium aspect, as you do need to think a little bit more about how you're using all your resources and stuff. It's a very resource management deck, but it's super fun, super great. I really enjoy it. I think a lot of people are not aware of actually the power of this deck. This deck can actually deal with a lot of stuff. It just, you know, like, it literally on the few matchups is Prism. Prism is one of the few matchups that kind of just, it's hard to survive. But honestly, the deck survives pretty well. Mirror Match survives against other decks really well. It's just overall just a really fun deck to play, and I really enjoy it. I hope there will be more support coming for it to kind of make it a little bit more consistent, as I think the grade 2s need to be a little bit better. I mean, mainly the Calm Bard. I'm sure there's something that they can come up with that'll just make the deck a little bit more just better to play and just make it more smoother. So hopefully I will see some of that in the future. But that, guys, thank you so much for watching. Hope you guys enjoyed this video. Hope you guys enjoyed the Beatrice. I know a lot of you have been seeing me play Beatrice, but have no idea kind of how the deck really functions. I took this deck to different fights with the navigators. I took it to locals. I've been remote fighting with it, and I've never really actually talked about this deck and how it works, so I finally have been able to talk about it. So hope you guys enjoy that. But on that, guys, I'm gonna peace out. Enjoy the video. Please leave your likes, subscribe, comment, and below leave me what you think about this deck. What do you play? Do you play Grand Blue? Do you play other versions of Grand Blue? Do you play Peanut Noir? What's your favorite Grand Blue archetype right now? Is it Night Rose? Is it Beatrice? Is it Peanut Noir? Is it Seven Seas? Tell me about all that stuff below, and let me know how you feel. Other than that, guys, peace out. До свидания, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!